to the podcast Era of AI with Rash. This is where we discuss AI in product design, tech, and beyond. And we share a lot of resources and workflows around it too. And today we have Adam on this episode. He's the founder of UX Pilot AI, used by a lot of us. So, welcome to the podcast, Adam.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. I'm really excited for this one because I've been using UX Pilot myself from a very long time. But before I dive into a lot of questions from your side, for a wider range of audience, would want to explain what UX Pilot is just in 2 sentences?
Sure. So UX Pilot is the execution layer for product teams. That's where your ideas turn into usable, but also on-brand product experiences.
Thank you so much. And it was really interesting for me to find out that you yourself have been a product designer before and now the founder of UX Pilot. How was that journey like for you?
Yeah, so I was working as a product designer and then created my own agency studio for a while and worked with a lot of startups, big brands. But then throughout this process, I kind of started feeling uh, kind of overwhelmed by all these processes that we or also teams were building around design, because a lot of teams are kind of trying to just follow processes, produce artifacts for the sake of following processes and for the sake of doing things, going through steps. It can be on the design side, it can be on the product side, development side, and so on and so forth, instead of really thinking what can influence, what can impact the product itself, what can impact the project you're working on. So just tired of all these useless steps. And that was at that time where AI was a thing, like people started being aware of AI, ChatGPT, and I kind of started exploring how we can get rid of some of these steps in the process and focus on the bigger picture, focus on what can truly move the needle. And that's kind of the whole idea of UX pilots started.
That sounds really interesting that you could empathize with a designer's process. And then with that perspective, you were able to present a product that could help us all. And I think that does not sound like a very smooth journey for me anyway. Were there any hard challenges that you faced that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, there were, I think when you're building a product, there are constantly new challenges on different ends, from talents you're working with, building a team, growing a product, and so on. But I think one thing that's very specific to AI that you might not necessarily find it in other markets is that there's a lot of buzz and hype created AI around AI capabilities you can find on social media, on demos and videos and so on, that are not always, that are not reflecting the exact workflow or the true workflow your teams will work on. For example, it's very easy in case of a design tool to come up with something that look really crazy in terms of UI and visual, and kind of go from I write 3 words and I get this output, and that's incredible. But that's not really how you work in a real environment and a real product. You go through multiple iterations. You have an existing product most often. You don't start from scratch. And you don't really see all of that being reflected in all these demos, because oftentimes like this depth is nothing really sexy, is nothing really interesting to showcase, but like having one prompt and one output is more. So that's something that we had to deal with and kind of try to work around, like how we can say we have this depth, how we can say we are truly helping actual workflows and not just creating something magical, but at the end useless.
So bringing in that trust in the users to use your product, correct?
Exactly. But also because oftentimes you might also be tempted to focus only on those things. Like say, hey, I got 20 users because we created this viral thing. Let's just only build those type of features or those type of, have that kind of focus.
Makes sense. So we know that what UX Pilot is by now. We know how you came into being with it. I'm really interested to know what's your perspective. How do you want to empower designers or teams with this product? Where does it sit? Where does it help them the most?
Well, if you want to like very kind of summarize it in a few words, it reduces the cost of iteration because I believe iteration is important. You can't just get rid of it and say, in one shot, I get my actual screen, my design, my product, and so on. So iteration is important, but reducing the cost is crucial. So we are helping teams to go from very broad, general, unvalidated ideas into something much more concrete faster, because they can explore things, they can see different possibilities, and then they can move on to this closer to final output much faster and make sure everything they're doing, everything they're contributing or exploring is already on brand, already following all those guidelines.
Makes sense. And I think rightly said by you, I really do see a lot of innovative features coming out from UX Pilot, which I try myself and get my hands on. But one thing that Adam, when I was speaking to him and you, that you mentioned the connection of connecting design system with UX Pilot, that is something I'm yet to discover because I heavily work around design system. So it'll be great if you can walk us through how does that look like. I think it's going to be very valuable for the listeners and the watchers to take us through a walkthrough of how a designer can connect the design system with UX Pilot and how they can benefit out of it.
So Nodi is actually our new agent that lives inside Figma. Other than generating high quality designs in Figma format, it has this powerful ability to use your existing components and existing design system. So as you can see here, I have all my components here, well structured, but there is actually no standard way to that you have to follow as long as you have components and component sets with different styles, properties, effects, and so on. Node is smart enough to kind of go there and fetch and kind of understand what's going on and kind of use all those in a smart way. And here I have my all my components. They can be on different pages. They don't need to be on the same page here. Just I kind of wanted to show you an overview of all these different variants. As you can see, we can have like simple components. We can have different variants. There is literally no limitation there. You can kind of freely structure your file. So you have to open the Figma plugin, log in there, and then all you have to do is to click use my components, and it will basically sync your components. It might take a few minutes depending on the size of your design system. And from there, all you have to do is to basically just write your prompt for one screen, multiple screens. So let me paste my prompt here. Right. So here I'm asking basically to create 2 screens. And you will see that Nodi will create basically a to-do list for those two screens we ask it for. It can be more screens. You can just start with one. You basically have the freedom to use it the way you want. Now, the other cool thing is you can basically make reference to different components or different modes. So for example, you can say do things in dark mode, light mode, or use these set of components. Like you can very much control how it's going to use those components or what kind of elements it will use. So it's not like it's set in stone and it will just do things in one specific way. And as you can see here, basically it used my components. It also customized them. So it's not just default state. And it also created some elements that were not necessarily part of the design system from scratch. So from there, you can either convert them into components if needed, leave them as they are, or even ask it as kind of a follow-up request to basically replace them by something different or something specific. It also made this indication that the inter display is not installed. So you can technically install it and re-render the designs without really spending any time there. So just because in my system right now, I don't have it. So you can see here again, basically all the instances and different variants were used, and there are elements that were not found or couldn't be matched. So we just used specific kind of created things from scratch. And then because these are instances, you can just basically go back, make changes to your components, and it will be reflected in these new designs, or you can detach things if you want, and so on and so forth. So you get basically that flexibility to use maybe with your design system as your design assistant.
Yeah. So as I said, it's very easy to start something from scratch. There are tons of tools out there that you can write a prompt and then get something out, but it's very hard to integrate AI into actual product design process. Most of the teams we're working on with, they have uh, many kind of different products, different screens, thousands of components, guidelines, color patterns, and best practices that they want to integrate into AI. And that's kind of where all the challengers are. And that's kind of the focus of UX Pilot. Right now, we allow teams to bring all their components from Figma, the whole design system files and components, into UX Pilot, and then generate designs that are on brand following all these guidelines. One thing we are going to release soon is to be able to do this same process inside Figma itself. So you can use your components, design screens, but then use actual instances of your components within those designs. So you can clearly see where those components are, how they are used, swap them, change them, and so on and so forth. So it's happening directly inside your design tool. But also we have a lot of teams. Yeah, go ahead. For everything related to design.
That would make my life a lot easier. And I think 1 year ago, I had to do those things manually myself, which would take so much of time. But it's good to know that's something that I can like get my hands on. But I will like jump on to the next question. We know UX Pilot is one of the AI tools out there which helps product designers, but there's so many other tools like that. Seeing that, what is one thing that you feel the future designers need to focus on? What are the skills that you like, from your perspective, the product designers or the UX designers needs to focus on?
Well, one thing that's happening right now is that not just for design, but also for code, for anything execution related, is that producing is becoming faster and easier and cheaper. But what to produce, how to think, how to frame problems or challenges or things you want to create. That's kind of where the key is, because we now see a lot of things being created, a lot of products being created, but many of them are useless because they're not taking into consideration the problems they are trying to solve, the actual users, and that's kind of where all the basically everything matters. That's kind of where you have to focus all your attention and then delegate for things that are time consuming just to AI for everything that's production ready. So it's not about like pushing pixels or moving rectangles anymore. It's about system thinking. It's about how you can use your judgment, your experience, and your knowledge about the product to go from 0 to 1 using AI.
Makes sense. So we're focusing more on strategy now.
Exactly.
And one of the things I remember you mentioned when we were having one-to-one discovery call about UX Pilot moving from B2C to B2B. What does that look like? What do you mean by that? How does that benefit teams and companies overall?
So we do see a lot of users using AI for their side projects or just to test things out. And that's great. And they can definitely use UX Pilot. But then we kind of see teams and people with this an existing product, with these more complex workflows, with a design system, they are the one that really getting a lot of benefits, and they see the true value of UX Pilot just because of this amount of complexity and the focus that we have. So again, that's just a matter of workflow, but also we have a lot of B2C users who are part of teams who just come and test things and then become then our champions within these organizations, and then they start adopting UX Pilot inside their team. It's not just about being able to generate screens for teams, but it's more about like some features that are more complex, like design system governance, collaboration, how embedded the product is into their workflows, how they can cut the time from idea to being production ready. So all these things require a certain level of UX maturity and certain level of complexity inside your workflow to truly see a UX Pilot value.
I think that sounds really strong for something like the teams and companies can actually incorporate that. And that's going to keep all the designers in a team on one page. At least that's how I see my team can benefit. One of the questions that's popping in my head, which we did not discuss earlier, but I would want to know, are you in future planning to make it voice-based, not just prompt-based? Like you can put your voice-based prompts or like have an interactive, because interaction-based, you can just ask it and then it will produce Is that something you're planning of?
Yes, it's in development because we got a lot of feedback from users who, especially during ideation, they don't necessarily want to type everything. They just want to have this conversation, like dump in all their thoughts and ideas and then get something out or get a feedback. So definitely something we are working on. And also oftentimes UX Pilot is used during meetings and during workshops. So people, they are talking about ideas and then they prompt something to visualize their ideas. So if we have this kind of capability, once we have it live, where you can then interact directly with the tool, then you can just have it as a additional team member part of your meetings.
Moving on from not just UX Pilot as a tool, I want to get to know your opinion on AI in general. How do you think the next 2 to 3 years look like for a product designer? And what are the things a product designer needs to ensure that they're doing to stay relevant in this new era that we're entering, or at least we are in already?
So I think things will definitely change. We will not have like the same kind of roles or definition of roles that we have right now. So I would not try to stick to very defined workflows that are anchored in these past definitions. Like I'm a designer, so I only do this and that, and my job stops at producing screens. But try to be flexible because what I've noticed is that nowadays you can basically, you're a PM, you're a designer, you're a developer. Everyone can use tools to create screens, to do research, to analyze research, analyze data, even code to some extent. It's becoming easier and easier. But what makes the difference is your capability to use these tools. Some people are extremely creative at coming up with new ideas, no matter their background. Some people are very analytics. They are great at understanding, finding patterns, sticking to certain workflows or processes. So it's very much like going into what you like and what you're good at, and not just saying, I'm a PM, so I have to stick to this. Because at the end, you might end up with something where you do different things, different tasks, but all those things are in line with your talents, with your capability, and then you can make good use of those skills and your capability with AI-powered tools.
Makes sense. Thank you so much. I'm wondering do you have a tip to give to someone who's wanting to go from 0 to 1 as a founder of UX Pilot? Do you have any tip for another product designer or product manager or a developer to have their own company one day? What are the 3 main things they need to ensure that before they jump into that journey?
To some extent, I'm also a little bit risk averse for certain things. What I usually do is I love having side projects. So because starting something is definitely the hardest part. Once you start something, then you can just keep pushing and exploring and learning. And usually you learn much more by doing than by just trying to plan or trying to foresee what could happen. So just focus on starting something, no matter what. It doesn't have to be unique, it doesn't have to be groundbreaking, but start with doing something you like, and then just keep going and going and pushing and pushing. And that's, I would say, it's the most viable way to first learn, because you will learn a lot by facing problems and challenges, no matter what kind. And then you will also develop these raw ideas into something that becomes more and more tangible, and at some point will solve a very specific problem.
And I think that comes to the last question. So
Okay.
imagine that you get a time travel machine, and you get to go back to yourself when you were 12 years old. What is one thing that you would tell yourself that would make your 12-year self really surprised or happy or proud?
I would say, as an advice, I would just tell myself to not limit myself and learn or do whatever you think is important. Because I think we are limiting ourselves quite a lot in whatever thing we are doing. Is always limiting by where we are, what we do, what we know usually. But I think we are definitely the main source of how much we can grow. So just by not limiting yourself, I think you can achieve quite a lot.
I think that's very powerful. And overall, I would like to say thank you so much for this talk. And I'm so sure that the listeners are going to take away a lot of key features from this talk of ours and also get to know your journey as well. So thank you so much again for joining me on this
Sure.
podcast.
Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. And for the listeners, I will see you in the next episode.